Hi, I'm Teelish, and you're watching Coffee and Clix. Today we're going to be talking about Pulp, and my guest today is Lucas Tom Van Holland, the current HeroClix Pulp World Champion. He's the reigning World Champion of the Pulp format. The Pulp format is a format in which only commons, uncommons, and rares are allowed. Every figure is considered unique. And it's a really fun and exciting format. I'm excited about this video. We're going to be doing a top 10 list, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Teelish, and you're watching Coffee and Clix. Today we have Lucas Tom Van Holland on the show. He is the current reigning HeroClix World Champion for the Pulp format. So congratulations, Lucas, and welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Lucas has been on the show before. Today we're going to be talking about Pulp, just in general, like Pulp figures. What Pulp figures are, with the release of Notorious and with the release of Wheels of Vengeance, it looks like there's a lot of new stuff that we have to look at. If you're considering competing in Pulp, there are a lot of figures that, including the existing ones, the pre-existing ones, just what figures are out there in the field of Pulp that you should consider. So Lucas and I are going to talk about that, and we're going to try to make a top 10 list, but we're going to have to, narrow some things down, and we might take some time with that. So, right now I have Ghost Rider up on the screen, but he's not going to be included. I don't think so. But Lucas, what do you have any thoughts about figures that we should start with? Like, what are the figures, the mainstays for Pulp?
Yeah, so
right now.
A few things that I think need to be really considered when you're talking about the Pulp format in general are that theme teams probably aren't happening. Or if they are, you have to have some really powerful synergy that not a lot of people are prepared for. Primarily because of how powerful Pulse Wave is going to be now that characters like Karima are gone. There's not a lot that shuts down the Blue Marbles and the Deathstrokes of the world. There's not a lot that tells them, hey, you can't do your stuff, right? You can outwit Deathstroke, but you can't outwit Blue Marble. So he's pulse waving you. It is what it is. So if you can make a theme work with a character like that, it's certainly nice. But typically a non-theme is going to be more advantageous for you. I think that there are some mainstay characters that have to be considered, at the very least, to be played after this rotation that we just had. Some of them were already likely the most important characters in the format prior to rotation, but some are new, especially with Wheels of Vengeance coming out and being released and previewed and everything. There are some characters from that set that really made a big splash on Pulp and how it functions. So yeah, we can definitely jump into it. You had mentioned Nekron. I absolutely think that Nekron is a character that has to be considered for a variety of reasons, but the first is that he's a 40-point probability control. The fact that Nekron has 7 range with prob and he's a giant means he sees all and he's not getting knocked back unless it's by another Nekron, because I think he's one of the only giants in the format. There might be a couple others, or maybe somebody who can go colossal, but in all reality, you're going to have to hit him with penetrating damage or double tap him to kill him. And that's substantial because he has the ability to heal, and then with his grave markers, he makes his own stealth. And when anything dies, he just heals. Right? Or any opposing character dies, he just heals. So I think Nekron being a newer character is definitely something that people have to consider. The other one is from Wheels of Vengeance that I think is on your list, Tony, is Blackheart.
Blackheart, yeah.
So
So I
I
have
pulled
Necron up on the
Blackheart.
screen now.
Mhm.
I'll pull up Blackheart. I'll just show everybody. So
Yeah.
that's what Necron does right there. I was actually curious with Necron. Would you also play Black Hand with him, possibly? Because he also does the grave markers. Um,
So I struggle with Black Hand. Um, he covers a couple boxes for me, to be completely frank. So I have a couple rules when I build a pulp team that I have to make sure that I'm abiding by. And if I can't meet those criteria, those rules, then I scrap the team entirely. The first is you have to have access to all 5 of the most important powers in the game, which are Perplex, Prob, Outwit, TK, and Leadership. So Black Hand covers 2 of those things. He has TK and he has Perplex. Perfect. With him and Necron, it's a third of your team, but they do cover 3 of the bases with the Perplex, Prob, and TK. You are correct that Black Hand can get healed off of Necron, but I do struggle, especially in Pulp, with a 50-point character that is just a 10 and a 10 for 3 with no movement attack.
mhm.
Because when we get into some of the other characters that exist, he just gets outclassed. I mean, even the fact that he has Mastermind doesn't really mean anything in this format when you can dish out as many attacks as you can with characters like Red Widow, who, for the record, Red Widow, I think, is the best figure in the format. Um, there is no better close attacker in Pulp. Honestly, there's not very many better close attackers in Modern than Red Widow. She is insane, and she won me most of my games at Worlds this past year. She was on my team. The 5 square charge with the flurry, and then getting to make an additional attack if you roll a 1 or a 2 on blades with the exploit. She's a 12 printed and has stealth and has improved movement characters. Red Widow is insane. So, um, but I don't personally think I would include Black Hand to answer your question. I think that he's just too expensive and doesn't quite do enough, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? He does pair well with Necron, but Black Hand, not like the rest of the Black Lantern characters from Notorious, he doesn't really do a lot for his point value. And I'm not a huge fan of him.
So let's look at, you mentioned Blackheart from Wheels of Vengeance. Let's look
Mhm.
at him. So Blackheart. Free, choose up to 2 adjacent friendly characters with a monster or mystical keyword. Place Blackheart in a square of hindering terrain within range, then place the chosen characters adjacent to Blackheart. So that's good if you have characters that share keywords. Then you have another trait, Brimstone. At the beginning of your turn, generate a fire smoke terrain marker in a square within range. At the beginning of your next turn, even if this is lost, deal 1 damage to each character occupying that marker, then remove that marker. And I'm assuming he can do it to himself, so he can like generate a fire smoke terrain marker within 5 squares, which is within range, and then he can place himself in that fire terrain marker, which he wouldn't take damage because he has invulnerable or
That is
toughness.
correct. Yep. So you hit the nail on the head there with how he kind of functions. Yes, he can make his own hindering. He can place in that hindering. Notice it's within range. It does not require line of fire. You just place it, and then he kind of teleports over there. So he doesn't have any movement attack, but he doesn't need it. And this guy's a menace. He is going to contend with Red Widow, Blue Marvel, and Deathstroke for the best characters in the format because of how mobile this guy is. If you look at, like, on paper, it sounds great, right? Like, oh yeah, I get a place and do the thing. But in practicality, what you're looking at is a character who can take friendlies and send them up to halfway across the map as a placement, and then they can take actions on top of that. So you'll notice it's just within range, and his range value can absolutely be modified. So when you look at characters like Peeper, who in the format have the shield team ability, and there are several wild cards in this format as well that have to be considered, you can get Blackheart up to an 8 range, pretty quickly. And it on a small map, which is where I think most people are going to kind of gravitate towards. I know that every single time I lost map or that my opponent got to choose map against me at Worlds, they all took me to a small map with one exception. And that was a guy who was playing the Watcher. I wanted to be as far away from me as possible. So with small maps, I mean, we look at that math with Peeper, 2 wild cards adjacent to Blackheart, giving him that bigger range. From square 1, he can place that smoke in square 9 if he's an 8 range. He teleports over there, places 2 friendly characters adjacent that have monster or mystical, so he can place them in square 10 if there happen to be a peanut base from Wheels of Vengeance or something. They're in square 11. And then they could still act. They only have 5 squares left to reach. You have full map reach with Blackheart almost always. And one of the other things that Blackheart has that I mentioned that's really important is Blackheart is also a card carrying member of the Pulse Wave Association. So he gets to Pulse Wave after he teleports away. So if you're based up with your entire team, you're in the thick of it, he can place that smoke away, teleport over there, and then Pulse Wave your opponent from over and at a safe distance. This guy is insane. He is completely different than the Blackheart we had from Rise and Fall, but he is very, very effective, and especially in Pulp, he's going to be everywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if next year during Worlds we see this guy on almost every single team.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, not to mention he has some power too. So like, yeah.
Yeah. No, he's great. He's absolutely great. I don't think you ever touch him at 100 points. He's just too expensive for not a lot for what he's doing there.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to consider him at 50 because, wow, he's very good. Very, very good.
Okay. And then, we still have some other figures. I mean, Deathstroke should probably be on there still.
Yep. The Deathstroke is definitely playable in the format still, and nothing's changed about him. He is still a menace and in my opinion, both at 100 and at 50. I don't think you play him at 150, even with the extra stock click and the extra values. He's still just a little too susceptible to outwit, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Where he can kind of get blown up too quick without the proper support. But at 100, he has that good level of durability paired with his attack power that allows him to do the super pulse wave. And still, the best way to deploy Deathstroke is Falcon. So for those who are who played Deathstroke before, I highly recommend pairing him with Falcon if you are going to play him, as he is one of the best deployment mechanisms for a character like Deathstroke, because Deathstroke does not have monster or mystical. If he had monster or mystical, you'd be using Blackheart every time. But without monster or mystical, you'd be using Falcon because he does share the soldier keyword with him, and Falcon can deploy him, 7 or 8 squares down map, allowing Deathstroke to place and then running shot pulse wave. Several of my opponents, I think out of the 6 games that I played, 3 of my opponents were using Deathstroke. They all were using Falcon to deploy that Deathstroke in a pretty efficient way. So those two pair together. If you're going to play one, you probably are playing the other.
Yeah, Falcon easily. Yeah, he's very good. I mean, but but Falcon can bring. Typically, I mean, if you're not playing Shield TA or anything like that, typically Falcon deploys farther than Blackheart, right? Or
yeah, if you're not playing Shield TA, absolutely. The difference is that Falcon is eating up an action, so you're committing to spending an action for that, whereas Blackheart is not. Blackheart just says, "Hey, we're over here now." That's it. The second thing is Falcon takes 1 character. I understand he has the carry ability, so he can carry somebody else in addition, but he is really only taking 1 character that gets to do something after his move, whereas Blackheart gets to take up to 2.
So with
So
Blackheart, it's almost like a free TK, free double TK.
yeah, but it's farther because they get to, even if you're not perplexing Blackheart's range or modifying it with shield or anything, he gets to go 5 squares. You place them adjacent, so they get to go 6.
They get to go
So
6, and it's not within line of fire, so it's just
correct.
within range.
So bring me to Morlock tunnels all you want. I'm getting to you. You can't stop it, right? Like it's if I'm in position, Blackheart's placing that smoke. We're becoming Harry Houdini and teleporting over there, and these two big guys are coming with me. Somebody we had mentioned already, being Nekron, is a monster, and Blackheart doesn't require standard characters. He doesn't require a size or anything like that. He just requires them to be adjacent. So you can teleport Nekron across the board. So like we said, if we're doing the math, there's an Alpha Strike right there. Place from 1 to 6. Nekron places adjacent in 7. Nekron has a 7 range. He's shooting 14 squares away, or he's shooting row 14. That's too shy of full map without any help at all. And that's a free action. So it's just, oh, Nekron's in the middle of the map now. That's pretty crazy.
Would you run Nekron at 75 points, or do you think 40 is the sweet spot?
I think 40 is the sweet spot because getting him up to that 75 point line or even that 125 point line is so trivial. It's really easy because all you have to do is put him in a grave marker and then go kill literally anything. Just be like, okay, I'm going to put him in my grave marker. I'm going to double TK out Red Widow or whatever I need to do. And then she's going to go flurry blades, kill 2 weak things like Aunt May and a goon. And suddenly Nekron's all the way up to full. Like, I mean, it's just so crazy easy for him to get to that point. And for the record, when I was talking about full map reach with Nekron, I didn't mention the fact that he also has sidestep. So he does have full map reach. You can just get there. And he can take Blackheart with him because he can sidestep and carry Blackheart around and or position him so that he's protected or whatever he needs to do. So those two are peas in a pod.
Yeah, that's crazy. He can sidestep carrying Blackheart, and then Blackheart could still do his free teleport thing because it's free.
Yep.
That's crazy. After he's been carried.
Yeah, and when you have maps like Wakanda, Blackheart doesn't have to go to his fire marker. He can go to any hindering. So if you're on Wakanda, Blackheart's going anywhere he wants.
Anywhere, and then he can use that fire marker to like dish out damage too, because it does deal 1 damage to.
Yeah, so
anything,
I pulled him for my Wheels of Vengeance pre-release that we just had this past week, and what I would do is I'd wait for any character without a reducer to become double marked, double tokened, and then I just place the fire marker underneath him and say you're going to take 1. Or if you place that fire marker under characters that aren't double marked, it forces them to have to move or have to do something. And for characters without move and attack, okay, you're going to have to waste that action. So that was pretty nice, pretty efficient. If we're talking about characters with monster and mystical that pair well with Blackheart, a couple that I think need to be addressed. Just right out of the gate, there's 3 of them that I just want to fire off. The first is Zerios. So I think Zerios is playable in Pulp at both point values, at 125 and at 30. Primarily because he has 2 stop clicks with Invincible, he has Prob Enhancement, and he has the ability to heal himself with Regen. Zerios is a pretty powerful character. His Screaming for Vengeance trait also allows him to... It allows him to be able to turn any friendly character into a retaliator.
Let me look at Zerios. So
yeah,
Zerios is a rare, so you would play him at 30 or 125?
I think he's playable at both.
Okay.
So it comes down to, do I want just a cheap or relatively cheap Rob character that can also turn friendlies into pseudo retaliators when things start dying? Or do I want him to be the crux of my team, the main focus of my team? Because when you look at Zerios plus Blackheart, you can do some pretty kooky stuff with being able to running shot up with Zerios, shoot something, and then Blackheart teleports and places them both away. So that was one thing about Blackheart that I didn't get a chance to mention, which is that Blackheart is perfect for for yo-yoing or slingshotting. So he can just commit and send you downfield and shoot something, or you can do things like TKs and running shots and charges and whatever you need to do with him. Go down, shoot something or punch something, and then he can just teleport you out behind a wall or back to safety or whatever.
Yeah, assuming that like Zerios, I guess, running shot carrying Blackheart, right? And you carry Blackheart. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it allows for some nice boomerang maneuvers where you kind of just, run around a corner, shoot, and then teleport back behind the corner, behind the barrier, whatever you need to do. I think Zerios is a incredibly powerful character. One thing I want to check real quick. So HC Units lists him as having the Spirit of Vengeance trait, but I played him and I don't recall actually seeing that on his card.
Yeah, what I'm
looking
at on HC Units, it says that he has the Spirit of Vengeance trait. So
yeah, well, and that's where. Oh, here it is. Grab the right binder. I keep all my cards in binders. I'm almost, unless I'm just like bad, which on Friday I was kind of in a different headspace. Okay, he does have it. I just completely didn't use that trait at all. Okay. So, which is just me being bad at the game. That's fine. But yeah, the Spirit of Vengeance trait allows a pretty nice interaction with
so the Spirit of Vengeance
with his
trait,
attacks.
It says when Zerios attacks an opposing character that took damage from Mystic since your last turn, he deals penetrating damage. If the friendly character that dealt damage from Mystics also had this trait, Zerios increases damage dealt by +1 during that attack. So basically anybody that attacks him and deals him damage, he's going to then be able to attack them with +1 damage and penetrating next turn.
Yeah, and that the penetrating doesn't make a huge difference when you're playing them on top dial, but when you're on low, if you have another Spirit of Vengeance character on your team, so any of the other Ghost Riders, let's say you decide to play that are illegal in Pulp that have that trait, then he becomes a 10 for 4 with a 6 range and penetrating. It's for 30 points. That's pretty substantial. It's a scary thing because that in Pulp especially, that can pop off and hit just about anybody, and that damage matters. So it's pretty substantial. And then back to what I was getting at with Blackheart here. The other two characters that I think need to be considered just right out of the gate with Blackheart and his abilities, just looking at, first the mystical keyword, first the monster keyword is Orb.
Oh yeah, Orb.
So Orb is a character that I know we were going to get to at some point anyways, because Orb is pretty nutty. I think he's playable in Modern as well as in Pulp. Where Orb, he can't crit miss. His 1/1s or crit hits, which is perfect. And if he has a 1, he can make the other one a 1 and force a crit hit that way. So it's pretty likely that Orb is hitting his attacks. Not a lot of die combinations where he can't. And then the other thing is that Orb has both running shot and charge simultaneously, making him a tough thing for characters to want to outwit, because you have to dump multiple outwits into him just to shut him down. And he also has Flurry if he crosses a rim of elevation.
Which is easy to do. That's pretty easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, especially now with maps, there's a lot of elevated, and you can't play elevated terrain in Pulp because they're not standard. But there are a lot of maps with elevated, and he gets some nice bumps when he crosses different terrains. So characters, hindering, outdoor blocking, he gets +1 attack for each of those. So he can potentially be a 14 if the right circumstances come up. Probably doesn't happen super often, but it can. But him just jumping up and going, okay, I'm going to charge Flurry you, or I'm going to running shot energy explode you, and I have prob, because of course he does, because he's got a Watcher's Eye on his head. Makes for him a pretty pretty undeniable threat, somebody you can't ignore. And with Blackheart being able to go, okay, Orb, you're over here now, it allows Evil Knievel to just kind of go crazy. Because that sculpt is pretty funny. Evil Knievel with a Watcher's Eye on his head riding a motorcycle. But, you know, what I had talked about earlier with Blackheart and the peanut bases is you can kind of extend that reach, right? Because they're 1x2s. So Blackheart places in 6, Orb places in 7, 8, gets to running shot to 12, then shoot 4 more to 16. So without any help at all, he's got full map reach. And with Prob. And then the last character that I think pairs really well, at least right away, this is just for monsters. I'm sure there's something else in Mystical, is Bizarro. So Bizarro from Notorious, I don't think, I mean, I'm sure people have considered him, but he's probably not at the top of a lot of people's lists because he's a little expensive.
Yeah.
But Bizarro being able to gain that extra reach, the hypersonic in 12 for 4 and just punch something with knockback. So he basically gets to execute something. Because not a lot of stuff is going to be able to take 5 damage and be okay. Blackheart being able to place him up and having Bizarro go through and punch something is a pretty nice combo. So, circling back to what we originally were talking about, I think Blackheart is a character that cannot be ignored. Something that everybody has to consider, and like I said, probably going to be one of the most played figures in Pulp until he rotates.
Yeah. No, I think Blackheart definitely one of the tops. I mean, I would say. So I mean, so far the HeroClix figures that we mentioned, if we're forming a top 10 list, is Red Widow, I guess, would be number 1. We have Deathstroke up there, Blue Marvel's up there, Blackheart is up there, Nekron, and then some of the newer figures like Zerathos, Orb. I don't know if Bizarro would make the top 10. I don't think so, but like,
I don't think Orb does either. If I'm being completely honest with you.
Okay.
I think Orb is good, and I think he's something that has to be considered, but I don't think he's quite top 10. I think he pairs well with other characters on the top 10. So it's kind of hit or miss on whether or not you'd actually want to end up playing him. The prob is probably the most important thing that Orb brings to the table, in my opinion. But and also his point value being 45. I was going
to say he's only 45 points.
Yeah,
for all of that value.
He's definitely nice and cheap. I like that a lot. I still don't quite put him in the top 10 just because of some of the other characters that we're going to discuss. One of which being just to keep jumping around and keep the conversation moving is 022 Doctor Strange, the uncommon Doctor Strange from Avengers Forever. This guy was on my team that I won with, and for good reason. And that's because, actually, the number one reason he's on the team is because I think that leadership is the most important power in Pulp. Like, it's very important in Modern. It's up there. It's probably top 2 in Modern, maybe top 3. But in Pulp, it's number 1. And the reason for that being is, in Pulp, we have a hyper fixation on efficient teams. Teams that can cover as many bases as possible, have a wide berth, but also work together really well to dish out as much damage as possible. It's very similar to Modern, but it's a little bit more pure in Pulp because it's figures only. There's not as many additional game elements. So characters that have powers that carry weight have to carry that weight hard. And so I had 3 leaderships on my winning team. And that was primarily because in the playtesting that I did leading up to the event, every time I had 1 leadership, and sometimes when I had 2, that leadership would get hit, lose it, or die. And then now I have 6 or 7 characters that I can only take 3 actions a turn. And the amount of tempo that you lose, the wind that just falls out of your sails, is devastating. Tempo is, in my opinion, the most important thing in a HeroClix game. For those who are learning and trying to get better and become a better competitive player, having tempo for your match is being able to keep that pressure on and keep things moving, keep attacking, keep dealing damage is the most important thing you can do. And leadership enables that. So Doctor Strange has traded leadership, which, in my opinion, is insanely important because it means that even if he gets hit, as long as he doesn't die, now I understand he's a lower dial with low values, but he can get hit for 3 and still be alive. And that's substantial because he doesn't just lose it. Yes, it can be outwitted. Yes, you can get one shot, whatever. But you don't have to worry about him taking 1 damage, falling off of said leadership, and then being in trouble, like the rare Mr. Sinister that everybody was playing prior to rotation before we lost Moira.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is he, with his leadership, increases tempo with the game by giving you Astral Stranges, and if you roll a 6, a Wand. So you get extra sources of enhancement, extra attackers. There's a lot of really solid utility.
Mastermind fodder for Deathstroke if you need it.
Yeah, mastermind fodder, body blockers, tie-up pieces. If you are playing a team that utilizes tempo in a good way where you are just kind of hammering it down as hard as you can, and you know that given the tempo of the game you're going to win, giving up points isn't the end of the world. So if you're just throwing these 15-point characters, as long as you have a good mind for where the game's at and that you're not going to fall behind because of it, throwing these 15-point Astral Stranges at an opponent allows for a huge tempo shift where you can tie up their characters, allowing you to move freely. They have to keep dealing with the Stranges. The Stranges have phasing, so you can't run away from them. They're going to catch you again. And then, they have enhancement. So characters making range attacks, like, for example, Nekron from 6 squares away, 7 squares away, if he has 1 or 2 Astral Stranges next to him and he's healed up, suddenly he's hitting for 5, 6, 7 damage. That adds up really quickly. And then the last thing with Doctor Strange here, the last 2 things, is he's got the best TK in the format, just bar none, because he can TK himself for free. So he's got really good mobility. He can get away from tie-ups and other situations. But then it also allows him to TK himself forward and then enable a double TK off of another character. So if I'm using telekinesis with a character in my starting area, I can TK them to 5. Strange can TK himself up to 5 and then TK that character up to 9. So it allows for an additional slingshot. It also allows for like angle TKs where you can like go forward and then go to the side or whatever you need to do up the ledge. It's a pretty substantial reach addition.
I'm pretty sure also they changed the rules a while back about TKing, where now you can TK after being TK'd.
That is correct.
Where before you couldn't. So he can just get in position to TK wherever he needs to be, because he can just TK himself and then TK something else.
Yep. So he allows for those slingshot potentials, and even if you never plan on using it, having access to it is going to cause your opponent who knows what's going on to think, right? It's going to cause them to have to think about it, consider it, and be wary of it. And that's always a good thing. Anytime you force your opponent into making a decision with multiple choices, it increases the likelihood they're going to make the wrong decision. So having the access to that utility in the Strange is super nice. And then he has Perplex. So like I had talked about how you need to have access to the 5 big powers. Strange knocks off 3 of them by himself for 40 points. That in and of itself is like, yep, he's going on every team I play until he retires for Pulp.
Yeah.
Just no exceptions.
And even like I've had games, because I've played him quite a bit in the Pulp format, and I've had games where people think he's a utility figure. He's just a character that's going to be for support because he's got the Perplex and he's got the TK. And so he initially TKs somebody in the beginning of the game, hangs back, and then like later in the game, I free TK myself and then running shot for 12 for 3, right? Like, and he's a good attacker. He's not a bad attacker, so.
Having that 12 or that 11 printed with the Perplex, it's certainly nice. The only thing he's lacking, I know he has a lot, and to say that he's lacking anything is kind of a stretch, But the only thing he's lacking is flight, right, to carry his astral stranges around.
Yeah.
But he's worth his weight in gold. Like I said, he's going on every pulp team I build until he rotates, no question.
So
And he's mystical, so he pairs with Blackheart, because why not?
Was there anything else in Wheels of Vengeance that struck your eye as like a good?
So that makes the top 10? Probably not. Zerios is close. I think he's a fringe character for the top 10. He does some really good things and needs to be considered, so he might be able to squeak in if we didn't get enough figures.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, in Wheels of Vengeance, there are definitely good characters that can add accents to teams without necessarily making the top 10. So the first one, of course, is Night Nurse.
Night Nurse, okay.
Yes. So Night Nurse is a 20-point support. So yes, I understand she is double the cost of Aunt May. So if all you want is support, don't play Night Nurse, play Aunt May from SMBA. But if you happen to share keywords, so the big one being scientist, I think is the one that's going to matter for pulp. It allows your adjacent character, to reduce pen damage. And that's pretty substantial.
It's good for Blue Marvel. So
very, very good for Blue Marvel. It pretty much ensures you have to hit Blue Marvel for 6 in order to get him to stop, which is tough. It's not easy to do in pulp. It takes a lot of work to do that. So if it's going to take minimum 3 attacks to get Blue Marvel to die, that's a lot of commitment in pulp for only 50 points. Well, also, if your opponent's got a lot of other stuff.
Do you ever play Blue Marvel at full? Because no. Not
so
with...
It's the same, in my opinion, it's the same fallacy as Deathstroke.
Okay.
So it's too many points committed into a character, where when you look at more efficient play from teams that have more of a spread out base, it's not going to do enough. You're going to get out actioned. Yeah, he's going to get to pulse wave and deal a bunch of characters damage. But if you look at Blue Marvel and go, okay, what is the likelihood that this character just dies to Red Widow? Right? He starts at a 19 with Invincible, for sure. Totally hear that. But Red Widow runs up, needs a 7 to hit him without any perplexes or whatever. So the odds of her hitting is above half. She runs up, and then she needs to roll blades. Okay? Well, the odds of her rolling a 4 or higher is 50-50. So pretty good. So let's say she rolls a 4. Okay? She rolls a 4, she puts into click 3. She attacks again. Or let's actually say we get a little crazy here. Let's say she rolled a 5, right? Let's say she rolled a 5, and she puts into click 4. So it's before the first stop click. She rolls a 5. She puts into click 4 before the first stop click. She attacks again. This time she only needs a 6, so now it's like a 70% chance of hitting, or whatever it is, 65. I don't know. Remember the exact math.
Mm-hmm.
She hits again, rolls a 1. Sure, she rolled a 5 last time, rolling a 1. Pretty good balance on the die. Makes sense. Puts him to stop. Okay? Now she gets to make a free attack. She rolled a 1 on blades. So she hits him again. This time still needing a 6. The odds of him hitting senses is only 33%, so he's probably going to miss. He does. Let's say she rolls a 4 again, because that's, again, 50-50. Puts him to a second stop. Okay? Doesn't kill him, for sure, but now we're looking at a 150-point character that just got put to his last click by a 45-point character with 1 action.
I do agree with that, but that's Red Widow. Like, what about other characters? Because Red Widow is probably the number 1 figure on our list. Like, she can assassinate pretty much anybody, right? Agreed,
which is why you shouldn't be playing him at full. Which is why you shouldn't play any character at full. Because okay. I'm gonna make a bold statement, and being on Critical Clicks, I make bold statements all the time. I'm very opinionated. You guys know that if you listen to our show. Is if you're not playing theme, which in pulp I don't think you should be. If you're not playing theme and you're not playing Red Widow, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
You have a suboptimal team. It's just the way it is. Figure out a way to put her on that team, because if she's not on it, you are playing a suboptimal build.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
you don't want too many eggs into one basket. You don't want that in modern, right? Because what happens when you have all your eggs in one basket? Those eggs get crushed and then you lose, right? It happens all the time. People play 150 point, 200 point, 250 point characters. They get blown up, or even 100-point characters, like a 100-point character with only support pieces around him.
Yeah.
That one attacker gets blown up and then they lose. They can't do anything about it. You don't want that. And you definitely don't want that in Pulp. So characters like Red Widow are excellent because she is less than a sixth of your build, because she's 45 points, not 50. That dishes out an insane amount of damage. She can't be ignored. But what happens if if your opponent comes across the board and one-shots her?
That's
You
okay.
still
It's
have
only 45 points. Yeah.
Exactly. You still have 255 points of stuff left. So you have to diversify that team. You have to have access to close, to range, hopefully multiples of each. And I think having a pulse wave is mandatory, just having access to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't playing. Oh, I was playing Blue Marvel. So yeah, I played Blue Marvel because again, he's objectively just one of the best figures in the format. But even if I wasn't playing Blue Marvel, I also had access to Star-Lord, the rare Star-Lord, on my team from Avengers Forever, the recruiter one.
Okay.
I played him because of the leadership, but he also is just access to Pulse Wave.
Would he
So
be
like,
would he be like a top 10 figure, Star-Lord? At
I
30
don't think
points?
so. I don't think he makes the top 10, but kind of like Orb, I think he adds a lot to builds and to teams. I think he's a good complement to a lot of things, but I don't think he's something you want to focus around building. I think he's something that you add when you have the space and you need what he provides. So that's why I added him on my team. Is I had 30 points left and I'm like, well, I have two leaderships. I really would like a third. And so I added a third. And he also happened to be another range attacker, a taxi, all those things. He's definitely good. He's definitely something you should consider. But I don't think he quite makes the top 10. But, circling back to your original question about could you play or should you play Blue Marvel at full, it's not efficient enough. It's not, I'm not saying you're not going to win games. I'm not saying you're not even going to win, small tournaments. But you're not going to win anything big with it at full, because what's going to happen is he's going to get too focused, fired down, and your opponent's going to score that 150 points, and it's going to lose. At some point, it's going to lose. I think there was somebody who was playing 150 Blue Marvel and 150 Deathstroke at Worlds, and I don't remember who it was. I apologize. I'm sure it's somebody I know and just completely forgot. But it's something that can win games if your opponent isn't prepared for it. But if your opponent's playing an efficient team that's built correctly with the right components, something's going to give, and as soon as it does, it's just going to come crumbling down.
Yeah. What about Kazar? Do you like Kazar or?
I do and I don't. So Kazar is a point of contention for me for a lot of different reasons. The main one is that he requires keyword sharing in order for his effect to work. The Zabu is definitely good. The leadership is good. He is not a bad attacker. Him being a wild card is certainly nice. I think he offers good utility. He has the same problem, in my opinion, as Falcon, which is that in order for him to do the thing that he wants to do, which is move characters around, it requires an action. So he slows down your tempo by just doing what he's intended to do. I think that he offers a good answer for certain things, but unless you're specifically trying to do an animal or an Avenger, right? Because let me find him. Yeah, here.
I don't know if he would slow down your tempo, because like TK requires an action also, just regular TK, right? And this is strictly better than regular TK, right? Like
I don't think it's strictly better.
Okay.
And here's why. It is certainly better in terms of distance. 100%. Well, actually, we're gonna split hairs here. Let's split some hair. It was better than TK in terms of distance until SMBA came out and all the speed values went down. And now your average speed value is around 6 to 8. So you're only moving up to half your speed, which is 3 to 4 squares.
Okay.
So it's not as efficient. Now, if you're using like Ten of Swords or Avengers Forever characters, absolutely, you're probably going to be able to move more than, 4 squares. And there are still characters that exist that do have a 9 or a 10 speed that do pair well with that. The reason why I don't think it is strictly better is because PK still has access for things like TKing down off a ledge or up onto a ledge, where with Kazar, if that character does not have improved movement elevated, they're going to have to stop. Now, that is the other thing is if that character is based with somebody and has to break away to move, whereas TK, you just kind of go, you're up here now. It's a placement. Placements are objectively better than moves.
Okay.
Most of the time, unless that move triggers something like an attack or an additional action or whatever.
I mean, there are some upsides to movement too, though. Like if that character's moving, they can also carry someone with them.
Absolutely, yeah. And then to be clear, I'm not saying Kazar is bad. I'm saying that Kazar isn't a be-all, end-all. I've seen Kazar. People try to make Kazar work since he came out, and he's fine. I think he does what he does, and for certain keywords, it works well. But like mystical, if we're talking mystical specifically, right? The rest of his keywords, which I think in Pulp, the only ones that probably matter are warrior, ruler, and maybe animal or Wakanda. I'm not sure about those two. I'd have to actually look through the characters a little bit more specifically. But for warrior and ruler, sure. But for mystical, he's 50 points. Are you playing Blackheart or are you playing Kazar? You're playing Blackheart.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that is just objectively better. Better. Yeah. So I think Kazar is good. I don't put him on my top 10.
I wanted to ask you, so like we were also talking about Wheels of Vengeance a little bit. What about characters with the pilot trait? This is a new trait that I'm looking at, like Moon Knight right now, set number 35.
So I think Moon Knight is the only pilot.
Is he the only one? Is he the only one in the comments in the CUR?
Let me go to a advanced search. Okay, no, Moon Knight and Elektra. Moon Knight and Elektra are the pilots. So Moon Knight gets characters named Moon Knight or Marvel Knights, and then Elektra gets a character named Elektra, Daredevil, or Martial Artist. I personally think Elektra's probably too expensive, but at the same time, she's fine. I'm just not a huge fan of her cost. Moon Knight is also expensive, but he's a little cheaper. He's a little bit more bearable. And then he does have the Moon trait, which gives him additional power selection. He does die pretty quickly, but having that perplex and that shape change is certainly good.
So when he does get KO'd, even when that pilot trait kicks in, you still score the points for Moon Knight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the downside. Yeah. So you would still score him, and then another character would come in on their last click.
Yeah, okay. And the only current pilot for Moon Knight in Pulp is the 013 common Moon Knight from SMBA.
And there are no Marvel Knights. There are no Marvel Knights.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there definitely are Marvel Knights. Sorry, I looked at Moon Knight first. Marvel Knights. So, Ghost Riders are probably a no. Blade is maybe, but he's still not super great.
Like you could probably give him some powers that are like what powers?
Well, that's what I'm looking at. So like Blade could give Steel Energy and Exploit, but that doesn't really pair well with Running Shot. I understand if he gets hit, it's certainly a thing, but not a huge fan. Luke Cage would be super strength and CCE. Yeah, Moon Knight is Precision Strike and Perplex or Precision Strike and CCE. He's probably the best in my opinion. And honestly, actually 041 Doctor Strange is probably the best one. He has energy explosion and prob.
Oh yeah, that would
Giving
be
Moon Knight guaranteed prob, perplex, energy explosion is probably the best one you would want to do. But I'm not the biggest fan of energy explosion and pulp. As weird as that sounds, pulp, like I said, everybody's playing these big teams, 7, 8, 9 characters. At least that's kind of how mine looked. That was potentially a little susceptible to energy explosion. But the reason why I don't like EE is because I was never really clumped up. I was never in a huge formation. Even though I was playing Watcher, I had a few characters next to Watcher, but more often than not, I was spread out because I was trying to achieve different goals and take out certain characters. So the energy explosion, I never really moved as a formation. The energy explosion never really felt great, but that's not saying that it's bad. Moon Knight does have 2 targets, which I do like. So yeah, Strange is probably the best option for him. And then for Elektra, she's the only Elektra in Modern. So there is no, at least for Pulp. So there is no option for a pilot for Elektra. For Daredevil, you have a few options, but none of them really provide good power sets. I guess
Speaking of Daredevil, there was a pretty good Daredevil in SMBA. I don't know if he would be considerable for Pulp. The 75-point Daredevil.
So, again, when you're looking at Pulp specifically, 75 points is a huge investment.
That's a lot, yeah.
That's a lot. Like you gotta carry your weight for 75 points, and I don't believe he does. He's a 8-12, 18-3 charge in cap with triple targets, to be clear.
Double charge, so he has double charge.
Once per turn, when he hits with a close attack after resolutions, he may move up to 4 squares and make a close attack targeting a different opposing character. Yeah. So that is nice. But let me ask you this. He's moving 4 and hitting 12 for 3. He has outwit. May target a character regardless of line of fire, which is nice. He has a 6 square outwit. But would you rather play him or Red Widow?
Oh, definitely Red Widow. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the thing. You always just measure everything up to Red Widow. Yeah, like
if you're looking at a close attacker, you have to.
Yeah, if it's a close attacker, right? You have to. Yeah, because if you're playing him, then you're not playing Red Widow unless you're playing both of them. But if you do that, if you do play both of them, how much are you sacrificing to play both of them? Yeah,
right. You're looking at 120 points of your build, almost half of it. That's going into what is effectively 2 close attackers. One of them is insane. The other one is fine.
Yeah, and you're just paying. I guess you're paying like 40 points for outwit, basically. Yeah. For Daredevil. Yeah.
And that's a lot. You don't need to pay that much for outwit. You can get it much cheaper. So then for so looking back at Elektra, the other option is martial artist. And for martial artist, there's a few decent options. Iron Fist gives precision strike and exploit, which is certainly nice. Elsa Bloodstone gives blades and perplex, which I like. Howard the Duck is a martial artist. That might be the only actual use case for him. Unless the pilot requires a single base standard character. No, just single base character. So yeah, Howard is a precision strike perplex character as a pilot. He comes out on outwit. He's not doing anything. He's not really attacking, but he is a decent pilot for his powers. You also get access to DC characters with martial artist. So Batman or in-cap and enhancement, or Quake and RCE. Ra's al Ghul, gives you precision strike and outwit, or blades and battle fury. I actually don't hate that. Strix, precision strike and exploit, or poison and perplex. That's fine. And I'm looking, for those who are wondering, I am looking for characters specifically that have 2 powers to grant. If they only have 1 power to grant, I'm probably not considering them.
Yeah, but it could be on any one of their clicks, right? You can choose any of their clicks for that.
Yeah, Black Cat can give blades and prob, or precision strike and prob, or precision strike and outwit. Black Cat actually seems pretty okay. For what it's worth, too, for those who are curious, Black Cat for 20 points, if you just need a prob on your team, Black Cat's dope. She does really well with that. Well, because she has opposing characters than 4 have safeguard friendly prob.
Yeah.
So if you just have her on your team, you just tote her around. She's a prob character, and their opponents can't prob stuff. That's like, oh, sure, why not? Bullseye is fine. He gives either precision strike RCE or blades RCE. Mr. Negative is an interesting one as a martial artist. Actually, he's an interesting pilot. So he's got a lot of different power sets that he can provide. TK leadership, blades empower, or steel energy and support. That's a pretty substantial power selection you can choose from, and you can change that from game to game, and actually Elektra can change it on the fly. She's unique in her pilot ability where she can actually change what power she's granted throughout the game.
Interesting.
So Mr. Negative's not bad.
I mean, again, Elektra, essentially, she's a close combat piece. So for 80 points, she's not.
You're exactly right, and I'm kind of rambling at this point. Yeah, there's not. I don't think anybody really realistically is ever going to consider her, just because you're right. She's a close combat piece that doesn't do a ton. Not in Pulp, at least. There's some decent options. I think in Bronze Age, actually, she has some really crazy options, but not so much in Pulp. I don't know how many characters we have on our top 10 list, but I'm assuming we got to be pretty close.
Well, right now I have written down, I have Red Widow, Deathstroke, Blackheart, Nekron, Blue Marvel. I put Zerios on there.
Sure.
I put Falcon on there, and Doctor Strange. So
that's 8.
That's 8, right? So
that's 8. So
is there anything that come out of Notorious? I mean, I maybe was considering Lex Luthor. I was considering
I wouldn't consider Lex.
Poison Ivy, maybe some assassin people. I know we said Nekron. Nekron's from Notorious.
Yeah. I wouldn't consider Lex. He's too expensive for his leadership. There's just better sources of leadership. I understand he gives everybody Superman enemy, but there are also better ways to just get outwit, I think. And him not having any moving attack, like I get it, he's a sidestep with flight. But for 50 points, man, he just dies. And like he gets hit for 2 or 3 damage, and his defense falls hard. And his utility falls hard. You hit him for 3 pen, and he's a useless character for the rest of the game. You don't really want that. I think that if they don't make the top 10, then they at least need an honorable mention with the expendable goons.
Yeah, the expendable goons, yeah.
I think White Rabbit Goon is crazy good. Because she's basically an Aunt May, or he's an Aunt May, whatever it is. Their real name various, but they are an Aunt May that doesn't necessarily die. Right? So like Aunt May, you can just come over and you can just punk her. She's dead. She's 10 points, she's easy to kill, whatever. The goons, on the other hand, they can potentially just keep coming back. And so when you have a 15-point character with support that can just keep coming back to heal your characters, I like that a lot. Gordian Thunder, same thing. Oh, I have this 15-point pulse wave character that just won't leave me alone. He just keeps pulse waving me every turn, and I kill him, and he just makes another one because he keeps rolling a 4 up.
Well, even regular goon, regular Goon goon, 15-point in power with plasticity poison. It's insane.
Yep.
And then when he comes back on a 3 through 6, he just comes back. So
and he also, for what it's worth, he has Batman enemy and he has Underworld.
And he has Underworld.
That's insane. 2 great copyable TAs. like really good copyable TAs.
Joker
So I think
Goon
the
with the flurry.
Goons,
Joker Goon can blaze flurry. All the Goons are really good.
yep. So I think they at the very least require an honorable mention. I think you had mentioned Ivy, and so this is an interesting thing for me, which is that I think Harley and Ivy actually pair together really well.
Yeah.
So Harley having, and the reason is that Harley has BFF, GFF. So Gotham City Underworld, or at least one of the keywords that both Harley and Ivy share, which is scientist as one of them, for what it's worth. Blue Marvel loves these two.
Yep.
Um,
And she can turn Harley can turn Blue Marvel into a Gotham City Underworld keyword
mhm.
if you're doing keyword
Yep,
cheating or anything like that.
absolutely. So the BFF GFF trait is definitely something that you don't want to ignore. It's a pretty substantial um, damage output that is kind of surprising to people who aren't ready for it. So, they get to make an attack targeting an opposing character that attacked Harley or another friendly character. So Harley or Ivy, because they both have it. Any other friendly character with Gotham City Underworld. That's attacked. So first and foremost, they don't have to hit. They just have to attack them. So that's nice. It's effectively a retail that you don't have to worry about them damaging you on. The second thing is if they ended up hitting the other one. So for Harley, it's Ivy, and for Ivy, it's Harley. They get +1 attack and damage when they do their free attacks. So Ivy with BFF, GFF, if you're playing Gotham City Underworld, or at least multiple characters of the Gotham City Underworld, and they get hit or they get attacked, Ivy comes up, she punches. If it was Harley, she punches 12 for 4. She makes a biting vine, and then the vine flurries. And the vines have Batman enemy, so they're sharing a 10 or an 11 attack. Ivy is definitely somebody I would consider on the top list.
Wait, so say that again with so Ivy. So how does that work with the?
So the BFF GFFs.
Yeah. Oh, it gives you a free attack.
Free attack. So you can carry up Ivy, and then she can whack someone, and then she makes the vine, and then the vine whacks them twice. So you get to make a lot of attacks. You get to churn out a ton of attacks really quickly. Like we mentioned, you've got goons that have empower. So like if you have a goon, right? And let's say you have more than one because another one of your expendable goons died and you turned it into a goon, because that's the only way you're going to get same one, I think. Maybe there might be a boss that's on lower rarity that can make them. But let's say you have multiple goons plus Harley's 11 attack. That biting vine swinging 11 for 4, 11 for 5. That adds up. That adds up real quick. And for what it's worth, Ivy at full is 80 points. She might be the only character in Pulp other than Deathstroke and Zerios. Deathstroke and Zerios, I think Ivy might be the only character above 50 points that I consider playing.
Yeah.
I think Ivy at 80 is worth it.
Would you play Ivy at 50? Is she playable at 50?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, if you don't have the point value available, or you need to fit in some other stuff, or it just doesn't quite fit your efficiency, she's perfectly fine at 50. I'm just not a huge fan of I only have one click of my attack power before I get hit off of it. Mm-hmm. Also losing the empower kind of sucks too, but she's perfectly playable at both point values.
What about Black Adam at 200?
So Black Adam, I knew we were going to get to this guy at some point. I wrestle with Black Adam. I think that he has some insanely good stuff going on for Pulp, but I think that under the correct circumstances, he also probably just dies. So you have to be very careful with Black Adam. He has two things he has going for him that are really good. First and foremost, he's cosmic energy. Not a lot of that going around, in Pulp especially. So just having complete outwit immunity is excellent. The second is he starts with invincible. So not having to worry about opposing mystics, just getting to flat, reduce by 2 no matter what, and reducing pen is good. So I think he is playable at both point values. I know that's a controversial opinion for some people. I think he's playable at both point values in Pulp. But if you're going to play him at 200, you really got to build around that well. You got to have ways to heal him. You got to make sure that he doesn't just die. You got to be smart about your positioning. So at Team Worlds this year, I played Black Adam Saturn Queen. That was my team. And it was fine. It worked out okay. And my loss was to a prime character, so not something you have to worry about in Pulp. But every single game, and I do mean all of them, I would run in, I would try and hit something, probably miss, because I just missed a lot that day. He would get hit down to click 5 through click 8, somewhere in that region, and then I would try and find a way to stay alive the rest of the game. That was literally how every single game went for me, and I anticipate that if you try and play Black Adam, it probably goes that way for you too. In Pulp, he's probably better at 100.
Okay.
But he's still really expensive. 100 points is a lot. Now, what he's cooking is nice. And the mastermind ability with characters like Blackheart is certainly good. I like that a lot. Blackheart and Black Adam on Mystical do pair together pretty well. They come up, they try and hit Blackheart. Blackheart masterminds to Black Adam. He takes damage, and then he does his chain lightning, living lightning thing, and then hopefully you can get him away to heal him, because, man, he can die pretty quick if you're not careful. Really, really, really quick. So I don't think Black Adam's top 10. I think he's playable, but I think he probably doesn't make my final list of 10 characters.
Okay.
I think Ivy does, though. I think Ivy's worth.
How about
that
Harley?
slot.
Harley too, or?
I don't think Harley makes the top 10, but I think she pairs well. She complements Ivy well.
So we could just maybe to list them together.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I would say it makes sense if you're playing Harley with Ivy. But you can play Ivy on her own. You're never playing Harley without Ivy, though.
Yeah. No, you're never playing Harley without Ivy. I agree with that. But as far as like GCU or Assassin, I know normally you don't play theme unless you have to, but there's a lot of synergy with like GCU and with like Assassin. There's the target trait. Deadshot's one of them that has the target trait.
Yeah. So Assassin was something that I was messing around with quite a bit. When Notorious dropped and when Wheels of Vengeance previews started coming out, because Orb is an assassin for what it's worth.
Yeah.
The problem is that assassins really don't work, in my opinion, without Ra's al Ghul. And Ra's is really, really expensive for what he does. He costs a lot. He doesn't provide a ton. Running shot blades is a terrible power combination that I despise. I just don't like it. It makes sense. Thematically, it makes sense for his character. But he should have had a ranged blades, is what he should have had. But I think you need him with assassins to be able to move that target around. Target dies, you move it around and get another one. When you're looking at characters with expendable goon or other things, shooting the goon, clearing that target, and then putting a new target on another goon and doing that, you're getting 40 points per goon. That's pretty substantial. But him being 80 in the right circumstances, he just dies pretty quickly. I will say, Red Widow is also a assassin. So, like we said, objectively the best figure in the format, does pair well with the assassins. She's pretty good at hunting down and killing weak stuff. I will give her that. And you had mentioned Deadshot. Deadshot's ability to just go, hey, this character from 8 squares away, you're dead. I like that. I like that a lot. But in order for Deadshot to be truly efficient, in my opinion, you have to have the ability to bump that range up, that range of 8. I like it if it's higher. So I probably want at least a couple shields adjacent to him. I also want enhancement because he's only 2 damage. I understand he has RCE, so he's shooting for 3, but we need to bump up them numbers. We need it to be 4 or 5 damage. Because 3, it just isn't enough unless you're picking off little characters. So if you're looking at Ra's al Ghul plus Deadshot, that's already 140. You have to play Red Widow, so that's 185. You only have 115 points left to try and pull off good assassinations, and you don't have a very diversified team. Orb is fine on there. I think he does enough. But I think that it's going to get outclassed by just Pulse Wave. I think Deathstroke coming across the map and Pulse Waving you is probably going to be too much for that to handle. So you don't want that.
Speaking of, you played Saturn Queen. Would she be someone that you might consider in a pulp team with her double prop?
No, because she only gets the double prop at 100 points.
Yeah.
If she had the double prop at 40, yeah, no problem. I would play that. But at 100, she's not protected outwit. She has no reducers, and she has no move and attack. She's fine in sealed. I think she was perfectly okay in sealed, but she'd get outclassed hard in pulp.
Yeah, because pulp. I mean, keep in mind, and that's a really important thing that you just said. I mean, as far as for people preparing for pulp, pulp is not equivalent to sealed. Pulp is very much a constructed format. So the things that are good in sealed are not always going to be things that are good in pulp because pulp is constructed.
Agreed. Very much agreed. So I know we're on the hunt for that 10th figure.
I would
if
say
you will
put Orb in there, right? Or no? Or do you have like a?
Again, it's tough because if you look at the 9 figures we currently have, they all do stuff that nobody else does, or they do it better than anybody else, right? B, they're all they pair well together in a lot of ways, but they all stand out as pretty unique, important characters. So I think the 10th slot probably goes to what is going to be one of the best defensive or support style characters in the format. And so when you think about that, you start getting into lower rarities, and there's a couple that come to mind, and we can leave the 10th slot maybe a little bit more ambiguous, but I think a few of the things that you have to consider. One, Zephyr Cuckoo. So for 15 points, and this can change from game to game, you can get a Perplex, a Prob, or an Outwit. So beginning of the game, take your pick. Which one do you want? One of those 3. That's what you got. For 15 points, Prob, pretty darn good. Especially in Pulp. I'm not going to complain about that ever. The second one is Aunt May. I'd already mentioned her a little bit already, but 10 points for support is really solid. She has the rally mechanic, and that rally mechanic allows her to heal potentially a full D6. So, you send your character out, that character does its thing, and then it's one of those situations where after that character gets hit, takes some damage, you run back home to Aunt May, she makes you some soup, heals you back up to full. I think that's a pretty solid character to consider. The next one, Peeper. I mentioned him earlier as well.
Yeah, he's still legal, so.
Yeah, Peeper with the Empower and the Shield TA. He shoots through everything. He's the only character in Pulp that does that, where he sees all, and he has Precision Strike. So even though he is a 2 damage, he's still plinking stuff if he needs to. But more importantly, that Shield TA and that Empower. Also, his ability to modify friendly character speed +2 if they're carrying him. In a world where our speed values are much shorter, that's really, really good. And then the last one I think that needs to be considered is probably Manifold.
Manifold. I love Manifold. I love this figure.
As you should. I don't think you play him at full. Again, 75, just a bit too expensive. But for 30 points, phasing, passengers 2 with a 10 speed. He also has shield. So in addition to Peeper, you also have shield TA access. And then you can turn off improved movement if he moves through characters. But then also he just has combat reflexes, willpower, and gives adjacent friendly characters combat reflexes. So if you know your opponent is going to be rushing up and punching you, like with a Red Widow, giving a bunch of friendly characters +2 defense is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I would say my last slot probably is a 3 or 4-way tie between those characters, between Aunt May, Stepford Cuckoo, Keeper, and Manifold.
Yeah,
I would consider
really
those.
I really like all 4 of those figures. I mean, for me, it would probably be Manifold, number 10, maybe Peeper.
Sure.
But then for number 9, I'll just go over. I'm gonna go over all the top 10 with everybody. I'll just show them on the screen. So that's number 10.
And I don't necessarily think they need to be in any particular order. The only one that for me is the undisputed number 1 is probably Red Widow.
yeah. No, I'm listening. I just put them in order just because I wanted to put them in order, but I could be wrong on the order. I mean, obviously, people watching at home or listening, don't take this with too much, truth to it, because this is just our opinions, and we don't really know how to rank these figures. There's no science to this, or it's not an exact science, so we're just doing it the best we can. But it is our opinion, and if you have any, if you think we missed any figures, or are there any figures that you want to add to this list, just comment post a comment in the YouTube comments below. So, but I have Manifold at number 10, or Peeper, or the other figures you mentioned,
or whatever. Yeah,
whatever for number 10. Number 9, put Zerios. And he's going to be a great attacker. He's from the Wheels of Vengeance set. Number 8, we'll put Falcon. From Avengers Forever. Number 7, we'll put Harley and Ivy. Or really Poison Ivy is really the main one.
Sure.
Poison Ivy from the Notorious set. Number 6 would probably be Nekron. I have number 5 at Blue Marvel.
Interesting.
Number 4. Yeah, this is the interesting one. I actually put Doctor Strange over Blue Marvel. I put Doctor Strange at number 3.
Or number 4, you mean?
I mean, Doctor Strange at number 4. Yeah, Doctor Strange at number 4. So number 5 is Blue Marvel. Doctor Strange at number 4. The Doctor Strange, uncommon Doctor Strange from Avengers Forever, because I think he's super important. Number 3, I have Deathstroke. Not that one. This one. Deathstroke. And then number 2, I actually have Blackheart. I think he's going to be super important coming up. And then number 1 is Red Widow.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of complaints about the way you ranked them. I think that's pretty close to being spot on. I maybe would still put Blue Marvel above Doctor Strange just because of how important he is to the format.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, a part of me says, you know what, Blue Marvel's more important than Deathstroke as well. But I get it.
Yeah, Deathstroke's just, I don't know. He's going to get played a lot still. I don't know if people are going to be... He's the one that gets overplayed, and everybody's like, oh, you're playing Deathstroke.
He sure does. I mean, like I said, half of my games I played against a Deathstroke, and I'm like, By the time I got to Ryan Redmond at my last round, I was like, another one? Seriously? Here we go. Like, because every game. So, for clarification, I was playing Sinister Moira, so obviously the Deathstroke couldn't afford to try and pulse wave somebody else. So they always had to come after the Sinister and the Moira. So what I would do is I'd put Sinister Moira on an island where they were both in stealth or, away, and the rest of my team over to the side. So basically saying, okay, Deathstroke, take your pick. Are you coming after the big team and you're probably going to miss, or are you going to come after Sinister and Moira? And so every time they'd go after Sinister and Moira, and then I'd send in Red Widow and kill Deathstroke. Every single time. Yeah. Like, it was just like, yep. That's if you want to make that trade, I'll make that trade, I guess. And it worked. It worked like clockwork. It was so efficient.
Yeah, and pre-rotation, definitely Sinister and Moira would be on this list, and so would Party Thor. Like Party Thor would be on here too, but
I don't know that I would throw Party Thor, but I liked him. I definitely thought he was good. I think Blue Marvel, as far as a pulse waiver, is probably more important.
Yeah.
The two characters that I would have put on this list pre-rotation are Teen Lantern and Watcher. Those are the two characters that I would have thrown on this list if it was pre-rotation. Because Watcher's 20 defend, unless you were facing Pulse Wave, that 20 defend was impossible to hit in Pulp. And then, especially when Moira and Sinister were also on the board. And then Teen Lantern having the Green Lantern TA, there's not a lot of that going around right now in Pulp. So a mass taxi with barrier, because I don't know if you noticed, but nothing on top 10 here had barrier. There's not a lot of barrier access. There's not a lot of protection coming in from Pulp figures. There are some, but not a lot. And so Teen Lantern having that barrier that she could prop through was really, really good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and of course, we're also we would add Karima to the list if it was.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
She was
because her effect is still insanely good. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is what we came up with. It looks like a good top 10 list for Pulp. Everybody at home, I hope you enjoyed. Lucas, thank you for talking with me about all of these Pulp figures and the top 10 coming up, helping me come up with a top 10 list for the Pulp format. And congratulations on your World Championship win. So you were the current world champion of Pulp. And
we'll hold on to that as long as we can, I suppose.
All right, everybody. So thanks a lot for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and post in the comments below. And don't forget, wake up and smell the Clix.